Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Christina Simonson. I am the Associate Director for Employer Relations in the Career Center. Today, we are joined by Joel Ortez, who is a special agent with the U.S. Department of State Diplomatic Security. He began his journey in 2009, and today he's going to share a little bit about his story. He is a two-time John Jay alum with a bachelor's degree in criminal justice, as well as a BA in forensic psychology. And an MS with law enforcement intelligence and analysis from Michigan State. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to you, Joel. I'm going to ask that everyone keep themselves on mute until the end of the chat, in which we will then open it up to questions and answers. So please, without further ado, Joel, take it away.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. I hope everyone's having a good day so far. I'm happy to be here with, fellow John Jay folks. I don't know if you guys have graduated already or on your way to graduating, but I know most of you are probably on the path to that. So, good luck and keep at it. As said before, I'm a special agent with the U.S. Department of State. To give you a little brief overview of kind of what we do as special agents. We do investigations into passport and visa fraud. We do protection for foreign dignitaries that visit the US. And also we do, as being part of the Foreign Service, we do a lot of work overseas, posted at US embassies, diplomatic missions, consulates overseas, focusing mainly on security work, but we also do investigative work overseas. And I'll go into a little bit about that as we go on. As you know, I started in John Jay in '98. I graduated a few years later and then went back and got a second bachelor's. During that time, I was at John Jay. I went to the Marine Corps Reserve, so it kind of delayed my time from graduating. And I spent about 16 years in the Marine Corps Active and Reserve. I first was introduced to diplomatic security while at John Jay College by Professor Eugene O'Donnell. I don't know if any of you have had him before, or I spoke to him actually the other day to let him know that I'd be doing this. So I did that route. I graduated. I got a corporate security job with Deutsche Bank. And then in 2009, I was hired by Diplomatic Security. So our training is about 7 months long. First, you go to the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center down in Glencoe, Georgia. You go, you get accredited there through their Criminal Investigator Training Program, CITP, and then you do your follow-on specific diplomatic security training. After that, I was assigned to the New York field office, which is actually located in Fort Lee, New Jersey right now. While I was there, I did investigations into US passports. I did one visa fraud case. And also I got to do some overseas work as well. And some of it actually was pretty fun, pretty interesting as well. I went to the World Cup in 2010 in South Africa. Diplomatic security and US soccer and the US Olympics have an agreement, that will provide security for them during these major events. So we have there's a specific unit in diplomatic security called the Major Events Unit. And then I actually went to the Pan America Games in Guadalajara, Mexico. And I also did a support trip for the Secretary of State's protection detail, where I went to India and Hong Kong. So I got to do a good amount of time while in the New York office overseas, and great experience, great folks, and just a good amount of travel. After New York, I went to Juarez, Mexico in 2012. As you know, things on the border are pretty interesting. There, I was I was a special agent, but the title when we go overseas changes a little bit. We call it regional security officer. So I was an assistant regional security officer. There, I was responsible for different security programs at the consulate, because it's a U.S. consulate in Ciudad Juarez. We worked with different law enforcement agencies. We have a pretty large U.S. federal law enforcement presence there. And we had to deal with a lot of security issues, as you could imagine, kind of with the drug cartel violence. So after Ciudad Juarez, I went on, I studied Arabic, and that's another big thing about this career is that, you know, you get to travel all these places, and when you're posted to a lot of places, you get to learn the language. So I went to Beirut, Lebanon next, and they put me through an 8-month Arabic course. So I got to Beirut, you know, pretty interesting place. I liked it a lot. Met a lot of great people, worked with a lot of great people there. Again, I worked on different security programs. Some of them, we call them like kind of like special projects. And I did a lot of liaising kind of with the American business community through a program called OSAC, Overseas Security Advisory Council. It's a public-private partnership that we have, and it's one of the oldest public-private partnerships that exist. I believe it started in 1985 or 86. So I worked with the American business community. You know, they, of course, you know, Lebanon's a very dynamic place, you know, sometimes with security issues. And so I would work with them, address any security issues they would have, you know, help them out if they can't, and try to help them out as best as we could, you know, to whatever we could do, you know, if they did confront any issues. So after Beirut, I actually went to the Manila, Philippines for 3 years. And over there, I was what's called an assistant regional security officer investigator. So I'm kind of part of that security apparatus. I'm really focused on doing investigations into visa fraud. And it's not just visa fraud. We work with the U.S. Marshal Service, and we to find fugitives for the U.S. Marshal Service, because the U.S. Marshal Service is only located in certain places around the world, but we have a memorandum of agreement where we will do the work with them, you know, to find fugitives overseas. So that was a lot of fun. As you can imagine, the Philippines, a lot of fugitives go there. We had a lot of work finding fugitives. We had a lot of visa fraud work to do. We prevented a lot of people from going to the US illegally, trying to work here illegally through using a regular tourist visa. And as I mentioned, we caught a lot of bad people that needed to, you know, face justice. While there, I also got to go to a couple Pacific islands, which I covered, like Palau and the Marshall Islands, which is in the middle of the Pacific. I'd never imagined I'd ever be in a place so isolated. You know, it's an atoll in the middle of the Pacific, and it's one of the least visited places in the world, and there I was. So after doing 3 years there, again, worked with great people, like all the other places I worked, Beirut and Mexico, you know, working with the host country, law enforcement partners was, I loved it. I had a lot of fun working with them. I learned a lot, you know, and you learn a lot about yourself every step of the way too. After Manila, I came here. So I came back to the US in August, this past August. Right now I'm down in Virginia. I live in Springfield, Virginia. And I actually work on Marine Corps Base Quantico, Virginia. So I work as a liaison operations coordinator with a Marine unit that responds to embassy requests or consulate requests, you know, pre and post crisis. Kind of if they know something's going to go on, some major civil unrest, and they need some extra security support, they'll call them. It's called the MSG Security Augmentation Unit. MSG stands for Marine Security Guard. So they're part of the whole Marine Security Guard program, where we put Marines in general overseas at embassies and consulates. But this is a specific unit with a certain mission to supplement security if needed at embassies and consulates. So I help them out, send them out to posts that need them. They also support some like presidential visits and also Secretary of State visits overseas. So that's where I am now. I will say I've had, you know, I love my career. I love what I do. You know, diplomatic security, you know, I think it's the best job. And I feel some of the positions I had, especially as ARSOI in Manila, is probably one of the best positions to have in diplomatic security. Because you get to, you're overseas, you know, you're on the front line of US border security technically, and you're also helping out with other things too. You could get involved with anti-terrorism, you know, human trafficking, and again, you're working with different agencies. So it's a big thing is that interagency work that you get to do in this job. It's not just focused on one thing, you know, you're working with everybody. So I guess we could go to questions, but before we go to questions, I would just like to say, you know, DS is, you know, is a diverse organization. We take people from all different backgrounds, all different experiences, you know, all different education. You know, some people get hired right out of college. Some people get hired and they've just retired from the Marine Corps. So, you know, we have a widespread of people, and that's what makes us a great organization, because we don't have, you know, it's just not one type of person that DS looks for. We look for everyone and anyone who can, you know, who can contribute. So I guess we got one question from Kevin Sicho. He said, have you done internships in your career? No, I haven't, Kevin. I have not. And to everyone else, I haven't done internships, but I would highly recommend doing internships. I know diplomatic security does do internships. You'll probably work at the nearby field office in NIFO, or maybe down in Washington, DC. I'm not too familiar how they assign people the internship or where, but I'd highly recommend it there, or, you know, at another federal agency too. You know, apply to as many as you can. It's good experience. It gives you a little bit of understanding of what folks do and kind of like the daily life of being in an office. Maybe not too much now, you know, a lot of stuff is teleworking, but you know, go definitely do internships as things start to open up. So Miguel Rivas, are there specific degree required that is sought after to increase your chance of hiring? I would say definitely no. You know, obviously all my degrees are strong law enforcement background. DS is a law enforcement agency when it comes down to it. But no, you can have a degree in, you know, any liberal arts degree, you know, and you'll be good to go. The big thing when, you know, what they're looking for is your experience, how you can articulate your experience, even if it's something, you know, minimal, just, you know, managing, because a lot of what we do is, you know, managing a program, you know, and, you know, something investigative or looking into certain things. So
good afternoon, sir. How you doing?
Good. Hey, how's it going?
Pretty good. Well, Semper Fi, brother. Got a couple questions. Does an age
Semper Fi.
limit requirement?
Is what?
Age.
So I know. So there is, I believe, the age limit is 21. I believe you have to be 21. You could probably apply when you're 20, but I don't want to, you know, give you bad information. I know the max age is 37. However, there are some stipulations if you retire from the military or have military service time, that kind of counts against that time, so you could get hired at a later age. As I mentioned,
Okay.
I know some guys who retired from the Marine Corps, and they were in like their early 40s and they started, and that's because they had all that military time.
Okay, yeah, because the reason why I asked, because I did 10 years and I got out 4 years ago. Okay. So I'll be finishing my bachelor this year. Well, not December this year. So the reason why, sir.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's a great question. And no, that time will help you, you know, with the age stuff. You'll still be, you'll still be able to, go through the process during that age,
Okay.
before the age limit though. Real quick.
I just want to jump in real quick. Stephen Ailing has his hand up. So Stephen, if you wouldn't mind.
Someone had just asked that question. I had initially typed it. It was an age waiver type thing for military service. So you've already answered it. Thank you.
Okay, and if everyone could just check the chat really quick. Angela French, who's the head of the public affairs, who's a public affairs officer for DS, and I've known Angela for a few years now. She's awesome. She put her email here, just so you guys, if you have about questions or other careers in diplomatic security, you could email her directly as well. And I'll put my email in the chat if you guys want to ask questions, afterwards about experiences. I have another question.
I could read these questions for you, Joel.
Okay.
Yeah. What do you recommend we do to set ourselves apart from other applicants for both the DOS and diplomatic security?
It's all about what I kind of mentioned is, when you go through the hiring process is how you articulate yourself, and also, getting experience. Experience helps. And I know sometimes it's not always the easiest thing to get good experience, especially if you're like myself. So just to share a story, like when I went to John Jay, I worked full time and I went to school full time. So I had no time to do I had no time to do internships, and many of you may be in the same situation. I understand that, but it's after you graduate. Sometimes just if you can get a stepping stone job, in a federal agency or a law enforcement or something related to law enforcement, do that, because experience really helped me. I got hired when I was 29 and a half. And I had the Marine Corps experience, I had the corporate security experience, and you walk into the job, with good confidence, because you understand things, but you're still going to learn a lot more, once you get on the job about the job. So
great. Are you able to juggle this career and continuing to serve in the reserves, or did you have to separate?
So I left the reserves. So I've been on for 11 and a half years, and I left the reserves. December will be 5 years ago. So about 4 years ago, I left. It's actually, that's one of the, thank you for that question. That was on my notes of something to kind of highlight for those of you who are in the reserves. Yeah, for me, it was pretty easy to juggle it. I was able to do my reserve time and do my, and work with no issue. I mean, depending on what service you are, what rank you are, there's a program called the Individual Mobilization Augmentee, IMA. That's something to look into. It makes life a lot easier. But yeah, I didn't have any issues with my reserve stuff. It's just sometimes if you're in a traditional reserve unit, you may have to organize something so you can do all your drills together. That's about it, especially when you're overseas.
Great. How was the application process? Was it competitive? Did you have to take an exam like the FSOT?
No, you don't have to take an exam. Well, actually, no, that's not true. Sorry, I take that back. It's been a while, so I apologize. So when I went through, they did an online test. It's similar. It's kind of, I don't want to say it's watered down, but it's an abbreviated version a little bit of the FSOT. And you can, you'll answer, some questions, some civics questions, other questions, you'll write a short essay, and then they'll assess you from there. I'm not sure if they're still doing that now. I think they are. Angela, do you know if they're still doing that?
Joel, I'm talking you up in the chat. Sorry about that. Can you, no. I had to get the Saya press release up there. Can you repeat the question?
when someone initially applies, do they still do the online test first, or do they look over the application and then do the test?
You know what? Let me check. I don't know if that's changed since COVID. I believe that they look over the
Okay.
application first, but I can talk to our recruitment team and get back to anybody that wants to know that answer. Again, just shoot me an email. I'll be happy to answer that.
Great, thank you. We have a question from Matthew. Is diplomatic security hiring at the moment or not, or no, because of COVID? And if so, how long is the hiring process? 1, 2+ years?
So I don't know if I haven't seen any active hiring announcements yet. You could check the Department of State website or USA Jobs. Continue to check them. I think on the Department of State website, you could sign up for notifications when they do make an announcement. The process, so I actually applied to DS 2 times. I didn't get through the interview process the first time. It's pretty competitive. And the second time, I got hired. So the process, the first time took about almost a year just to go to the interview. And then the process took less than a year the second time I applied. From the time I applied to the time I started training was less than a year. So really, it kind of depends on what's going on. So if you guys aren't checking out what's being said in the chat, I'd recommend checking out. There's some good information. Angela, thank you. You highlighted a case of mine that I had in the Philippines. That's one of the cases that I did as for fugitives. Other questions?
I think it was a great pivot, talking about that application process. Can you talk about a little how students can prepare for an interview of this magnitude? Are they more behavioral focused, technical?
Yeah, so I can't go into too many details about the interview process, but what I can tell you, all the students and everyone watching, kind of what I alluded to earlier. The big thing is how you articulate yourself, and you could show your responsibility. How you've taken responsibility for certain things in your life, whether it's planning a wedding or planning a school event or something like that. They may ask you questions in the interview, and you may be like, oh wow, I don't know how to answer that, but you actually can. It's just just being able to think about things that you've managed and things that you've planned and done and worked with people before. And it's kind of like very superficial, I know, but that amount of information is actually pretty helpful, will be helpful.
Can you talk a little bit about what kind of skill sets, hard and soft skills students can be working on now to make them, strong candidates for this application process?
I would say, get involved with activities at school. Get involved in groups, if you have the time. If you're working full time, I mean, just that work experience, even if you're doing something that you think like, hey, I'm just doing this to make some money. I don't think it's that important. What you're doing, you're building skill sets, you're working with people. And that's a huge thing in diplomatic security, is working with people. As I mentioned, interagency, I worked with, I think, just about almost every single federal agency out there, the major ones. And also, I worked with, our foreign law enforcement counterparts. At the end of the day, people are people. We all have the same, basic wants, needs, interests, for the most part, outside of, major cultural differences. But, just, exposing yourself to different things, being in the foreign service is having an open mind, and especially, working with your foreign counterparts, with your law enforcement partners, there has to be that level of understanding, a level of respect, and that's how I've had a lot of successes, due to that. So, working with our foreign counterparts. So that's kind of like what I'd say as far as hard skills. Any hard skills for that a special agent has, you'll learn obviously in training, and we have a great training cadre. Some of the training that you would go through is some of the best. So that's all I have for that.
Thank you. We have a question. What level of language proficiency, elementary, intermediate, advanced, is deemed valuable when applying?
So of course we like language. I have Spanish. So when I went to Juarez, Mexico, I only went to Spanish class like very briefly, because I never tested in it. So I had to go to it, but I just kind of, went to it, and I improved what I knew grammatically by going through. So I benefited from it. But knowing a language obviously before and testing out before you come on will help you, especially sometimes when there's positions that open up overseas and they need someone to go to it right away, and it might have a language designation. If you have that language, they'll pick you over other people to fill it. And also for these major events, like I mentioned, this summer I'm going to Tokyo for the Olympics. If you have Japanese, I don't have Japanese, but if you have Japanese, you'll be one of the first people to be looked at to go. Or like the Pan American Games, Spanish, or the Winter Olympics last year or 2 years ago was in Korea, South Korea. So if you knew Korean, those sort of things is where knowing a language before and testing on it when you first get hired really helps.
Great, thank you. We have a question. Will you eventually need to get a secret clearance or top secret clearance?
So yeah, a top secret clearance is required, top secret and higher, to go through the clearance process.
Great. Any other questions, guys? Is DS part of DHS?
No,
Yes,
so DS is part of the Department of State. So we're kind of like the Department of State is the foreign affairs entity of the U.S. And DHS, Department of Homeland Security, is a completely different department. So we're both different. It's both separated. But we do a lot of work together. There's a lot there, and there is a lot of crossover when it comes to visas and different types of immigration applications.
Perfect. Jonathan, did you have a question? No? Okay. We have a question in the chat. What was your typical work schedule prior to COVID, and how does it look now?
So before COVID, prior to COVID, so I was in the Philippines when COVID happened, and I was going to work Monday through Friday, kind of normal working hours for the most part, but we weren't able to schedule certain things to go outside the area, outside of the Manila area, such as we wanted to do certain fugitive operations and we couldn't. We wanted to provide training to certain host nation counterparts and we couldn't. And I was only going to the embassy maybe 2 days a week. The only good thing out of it, there was no traffic like most other places. But Manila gets pretty bad, even worse than New York, guys. Now I'm still teleworking most of the time. I go to the office, and I'm in pretty much a liaison position where I'm with a Marine unit. But I do get enough time to do face-to-face with them and work with them. And if I'm not in the office, I just do a lot of calls usually. So.
Great. Would being in the Coast Guard enhance your application?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, Coast Guard, any military service, any federal service, law enforcement, management positions in any type of job, help, will be very helpful. Work experience doing almost anything. If you could articulate you had responsibility in something, that you worked with people. Hey, that's what we want. We want people who know how to work with people, people people who know how to manage and be leaders.
Are disabled veterans encouraged to apply?
Yeah, I'd encourage disabled veterans to apply. Yes.
As a senior looking into job opportunities in diplomatic security, which class level is best to look at?
Um,
I'm not sure.
which
Can I jump in on this, Joel? I'm so sorry.
Sure.
I'm like just totally taking over your entire talk.
No.
Sorry about that. So when you're asking about grade level, you're asking about a government service grade level. And because Joel is part of the Foreign Service, it's actually, they don't go by GS9 or GS11. But if you're looking at something over at Department of State or FBI, whatever, usually you guys would be, employed starting at the GS7 or GS911. But Joel, I'll let you talk about how the Foreign Service kind of grades you and how they start out for the hire.
Yeah, so the Foreign Service, for those of you who've been in the military, or for those of you who haven't and are aware how the military system works with promotions, the best way to describe it is it's the same. Pretty much your first few promotions are automatic. You have to think more on the officer level. I myself, I was enlisted, but you have to think kind of on the officer level. I know the first few ranks in enlisted are automatic. So you're automatic until FS 04, which is the same as a GS 12. And then when you go from FS 04 to FS 03, so the numbers actually go down, they don't go up like the GS system. It becomes competitive, and you get what's called your evaluation is kind of written out. It's actually longer than what a military evaluation would look like. So it's more like writing. So it goes in front of a panel, and then the panel, picks who gets promoted that year, and it's every year. If you're eligible for promotion, you're looked at for promotion. So right now I'm a FS03, which is the same as a GS13.
Thank you. For people who don't have law enforcement or military experience, will it be difficult to be hired or considered? What other experiences are considered helpful?
No, I definitely say no, to that. It wouldn't be difficult to get hired. I know a lot of my colleagues have no law enforcement, no military experience. And as I mentioned before, that's kind of what makes DS, people with all different backgrounds and experiences coming in, because it gives us different approaches to, problem solving when we encounter something, especially overseas where it's, it can be complicated at times. What other experiences will be helpful? As mentioned before, management experience, interfacing with people, dealing with people. I mean, even if you're, an admin assistant somewhere and you're talking to people all the time, you're going to talk to people in all different situations, right? Some people might be annoyed at you. Some people, just average talk. But it's how you, take control of those, situations that aren't so great is kind of, what, is good experience. And that's experience that, we look for, people who can really talk to people and interface with folks.
I actually had a quick question to add on that. What type of positions would you go into if you didn't have any law enforcement or military experience?
So everyone's the same as a special agent. So I went in, I had zero law enforcement experience. So they put you through all that. They put you through the law enforcement, accreditation course down at the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center. And then they do the follow-on training, and you learn kind of, how to work up an investigation, how to, do searches. You learn about, the constitutional law. Oh, and just to note, because I had a Bachelor of Science in Criminal Justice from John Jay, I focused on laws in the court, and I focused on like constitutional law and those classes, search and seizure. It actually helped me in training, and it made training a lot easier for me because I remembered most of the stuff that I learned in class. But yeah, so everyone, it doesn't matter what your experience is, everyone comes to DS as a blank slate, and you're trained as a special agent. So you don't go into any specific positions based on experience or anything like that.
Great. Do you always go overseas, or is it helpful to sign up for these assignments for career growth?
So we are the Foreign Service. People can decide to not go overseas as much as I have, or will, hopefully. And some people do decide to spend most of their career overseas. Is it helpful? I can't really say. I don't know what is exact. There's no formula for career growth as far as promotion wise. And the great thing about this profession is you kind of make it what you want. You get the choice of different assignments, and you put in for those assignments. I've been fortunate. I've gotten the assignments I've wanted, and I've enjoyed all my assignments, so there's a lot of different options, getting here, and every 2 years, every 3 years, it's like you have a new job almost. A lot of it's, in some positions it's very similar, especially some of the overseas work. But, you have a new boss, new people you're working with. So nothing's very stagnant. It's always moving, always something new. So it keeps it fresh. It keeps the career exciting.
How much does the ability to de-escalate situations play into the role in diplomatic security?
It can play a big role many times, especially overseas when, there could be, disagreements with certain certain things people want to do, and they may not be able to do it because of security reasons. In law enforcement work, you may come across a situation like any law enforcement officer where you have to de-escalate, a situation that might seem that it could get out of hand. So being able to de-escalate, being able to talk to people, communicate with people, is very important.
What would be an entry-level salary a fresh graduate could expect to earn?
I do not know offhand what the salary rates are. It's public information, so you can look up. You can look up the kind of the salary schedule. You could just look up like Foreign Service. You could probably look up Foreign Service, salaries, and then it'll tell you there. It'll give you kind of like a scale, like how many years you're on, and then the salary level.
Let's see. Does dual citizenship affect your potential opportunities?
I know for the clearance process, that's where it's going to probably potentially become an issue, but you would have to go through the clearance process, and then they would give you more guidance on that. Usually they kind of want someone to not have a second passport. I understand certain countries, like, so let's say Colombia, you know, or Mexico, if you're born there, like, you're a citizen, you can't renounce it, you know, and everyone, you know, they know that that happens in a lot of countries. So it's kind of like, hey, you know, do you actively have a passport for that country, and those sort of things is what they look for. But as if you go to a federal government job that requires a clearance, they'll provide more guidance on that during the clearance process.
Great. I think that is it for the questions in the chat. I just want to thank you for being here today. Please do take a look at the chat. I know Angela had popped in some email addresses, so if there are any follow-up questions, this chat will be saved and put on our Career Chats website, the webpage on the John Jay Careers website. So if you do need to go back to it, Joel, I think you sent me that to you.
Yeah, I'm putting my email address in there, so you should get it now. So if you want to reach out, you know, just let me know.
Of course. And so once again, thank you so much for joining us today. This was really helpful information, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, everyone.
All right, everyone. I hope, you know, best of luck with the rest of the time at your John Jay. Best of luck with, you know, applying to, you know, future careers, and just, you know, keep at it. Don't you know, failure's, you know, part of, you know, life. So if you don't get something the first time, you know, definitely try again if you really want it. So, you know, just keep at it. That's the only advice I got to say. So I wish you guys the best. And if you have any questions, or you want to, you know, just give me your, you know, say, hey, Joel, can you give me a call? I got some specific questions. I put my email on there. Just shoot me an email. No problem.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Take care.
Take care, guys.
Thank you. You too.